Here we go.
All right.
Hey, if you got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition. Home Gadget Geeks Thursday night. It's the 1st of September. It's 2022. It's 8 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. If you've got it any other time than that, you've got the recorded version on YouTube of the live. That's okay. Hang tight. We're going to get started in just a second. Some of you like this part. We do a little beer, whiskey, or in my case tonight, we're going to do a little bit of both. So hang tight. We'll get started with the regular show in just a second. We got some live listeners out there. I see Bob, or producer Bob, as we've started calling him. Brian and Ken have showed up. A few more folks will jump in. Jay Franze is with me tonight. Hey, Jay, welcome to the pre-show.
Jim, sir, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
No, great to have you. We do the beer pour. I'll let you. You've got a little drink there. While you're doing that, I've got some Guinness again this week that I'll be pouring. So what do you got?
Nice. I have a glass of whiskey-ish tonight.
Whiskey-ish?
Whiskey-ish.
Okay.
I say that because the purists in my world, I live in northern Kentucky at the moment. Mm-hmm. So bourbon is the way to go. And right. I don't know if you can see back there for those watching, there's definitely a lot of bourbon on the shelf back there.
Nicely done.
However, tonight I am drinking whiskey-ish, which is, to me, Fireball, sir.
Oh, little Fireball.
I usually get criticized for my, my Fireball here, but
no, we in Bellevue where I live, the kids buy these Fireball shooters all the time, and then they just toss them on the side of the road, and we kind of say that's like the state bird or something. They're just everywhere, no, Fireball's got its. Have you done the there's a Tennessee version of it.
Yeah, Jack Daniels has fire.
Yeah.
Evan Williams has a fire. I don't know what they call theirs, but theirs is really good. Theirs is probably the best out of them all.
Well, KDJ says, you told me this was coming. Savor the flavor of the awesomeness. And you gents for sharing your delectable, scrumptious, deliciously edible, tasty, good, heartfelt thoughts with us tonight.
I love Kenny.
KDJ, thanks for getting us started right on that. So Fireball, it's actually really good. I mean, it's really a good additive for a lot of drinks if you want to spice them up a little bit during Christmas holidays, some of those kinds of things. So no, I don't. Are you drinking that straight?
I am, yes, sir.
Wow.
Well, on ice.
Yeah. So that does take a little bit of courage. That's a lot of cinnamon in there.
I love spice. I love cinnamon. I'm good.
I am doing so on the bourbon side of things. I've got Steeple Ridge, which is a local distillery just up the road, about an hour and a half northeast in Iowa. So if we're going to head out to that distillery, I just kind of found them over the last couple weeks. They're running a really nice sale at Wall to Wall Wine here in Omaha, and for $20, I picked up a pretty nice bottle, and it's been pretty tasty, kind of dark and smoky and delicious, and still caramely and a little sweet. And so it's been a good one. They do an interesting thing. They glue a penny to the neck of the bottle for the year that the bottle or the year it was bottled. So I don't know if I'm ever going to get a penny that's old, because I'm probably going to drink the bottle first. But that's the little gimmicks that they do in liquor.
That's funny. It makes you buy the collection, is what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like, what's it? What's the one? Barton's or
Blanton's.
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 Thank you. Yes. Yeah. By all the different horses.
Yep. Yeah, and the last horse is the hardest one. It's like the McDonald's. Remember when McDonald's had the sweepstakes and you had to spell things out, and it was always that last letter? Blanton's does the same kind of thing. Blanton's is okay. I mean, I put myself on a waiting list, and I've gone through a bottle or two, but it's okay. We bought some now that I say this, I'm going to forget. Not Evan Hill. You said Evan Hill earlier, but it'll come back here in just a second. We've been trying to find, with inflation going up, we've been trying to find kind of the discount, but still good, stuff in that, because you can pay a lot of money for this stuff.
being in Kentucky, I find stuff that people say is hard to find, but it's definitely not hard to find around here. But I have Buffalo
Yeah.
Trace back there.
Yep.
That's really good.
Yep.
I have
Is that pretty easy to find in your?
very easy.
Okay.
And not to mention my office is literally directly next to the distillery. When I
Nice.
say directly, I mean directly, like shares a parking lot.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty
All
cool.
right. That is cool.
And
Sazerac owns that. Right?
Elijah Craig back there. And
Yeah.
the one
Elijah
I've really
Craig is what I
liked-
was thinking of. Yeah, that's the one we got for $20.
Yeah, that's good. And what's the other one? Woodford Reserve is really good.
Yep. Yeah, they have a double oak that's pretty good too.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, they're double oaked. That is, and even we've been looking at so Jim Beam, which Jack and Jim at their retail offerings, it's pretty rough, right? I mean, those are cutters, mix them with some stuff. They're not great to drink straight. But they have one called Extra Aged, Jim Beam Extra Aged, that I actually really like. It kind of reminds me of Buffalo Trace, but with a little bit more flavor to it. So it's kind of got that same. I think Buffalo Trace could use a little more flavor at times. It feels a little weedy to me. But
Well, that's their entry level bottle. But
yeah, true.
Jim Beam's right around the other side of my office too. It's only a couple miles away, so I'm good.
Man,
But
I need to come in.
Yeah,
You got a
come work
room
with
I
me.
could
That's what I'm saying. Come stay for a
in?
little while. We're
I-
surrounded here.
May not have any kidney or any liver left by
Right.
the time we leave, but Bob's checking in. He says he likes the double oaked
Double Oak is awesome.
Woodford Reserve. Yeah, it is a good one. And then, hey Joe, good to see you. Uncle Marv's checking in as well. Yeah, and then we got the Guinness going as well, which I found some bottled Guinness. Our grocery store has been doing a good job of clearancing. I never heard of clearance beer, but our grocery store is doing it. Makes it about $4.50 a 6-pack.
Does it expire?
It's I don't think so. I mean, and they're just so I don't. It tastes good to me. So I've been fighting inflation every chance I get, and they taste great. So I've been popping those in the fridge too.
Nice.
Well, now I'm really intrigued because you've got all these distilleries. Like you're right on the
Everywhere.
so you're on the bourbon trail for sure. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, they are everywhere around here.
Yeah.
And I've only been in this area for a year now. And since I moved here, I think that's the gift everybody gives me is a bottle of bourbon. So for Christmas, I've got
It's
a
like
handful
water.
of bottles. I mean, that's
When there's an emergency, they bring out bottles of bourbon.
I didn't drink before I moved here. Now now I need help.
Yeah, well, it's not a bad. My wife's parents lived in Moorhead, Kentucky, for a lot of years out on the flat, and then moved up. I forget where, but we'd fly into Cincinnati, and they were just about an hour from Cincy. So, unfortunately, in those days, I wasn't into bourbon. I really missed. I lived in Germany for 3 years, didn't drink any beer.
Oh,
Visited Kentucky for a lot of years, didn't
No
buy any
bourbon.
bourbon. I know it was.
Jim, you're fired.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. Now, if you're joining us tonight, hey, thanks, KDJ. Appreciate that those comments as well. Bob, our producer Bob, says emergency services has a bourbon truck. Yeah, right on. Like you can't. I mean, if the water's no good, the bourbon will be great, right? And they got plenty of it. So it's amazing to me just how much we produce as a country.
It's funny. I take business trips over to like Louisville and Lexington and stuff, and all you see is advertisements for bourbon everywhere.
Yeah.
You mentioned the airport. The Cincinnati airport's actually in Kentucky, of all
Yeah.
places.
It's
funny.
it's on the south side of Ohio.
I live just a couple minutes from it, right over the river from Cincinnati. So,
Mm-hmm.
and there's even a few Kentucky bourbon places in Cincinnati itself. So it's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're in the heyday of bourbon. It won't last forever. They'll move on to people get tired of it and they'll move on to something else. And then
A roller coaster.
yeah. Oh no, we always go in these cycles. I think ryes are kind of on a rise. A lot of folks are getting into ryes.
I went to Texas a couple weeks ago for business, and I forget what brand it was, but had a rye for the first time. It was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Balcones? Was it a Balcones? Does that?
No.
Texas has got some big distilleries too. So, yeah, it's fun. My dad drank a lot and he just drank to drink, you know. And I was always afraid. I didn't drink for a lot of years because I was afraid I would, I'm his spawn. So I was like, and I have tendencies to be, I have addictive tendencies, right? And so most of those are good, but I still have addictive tendencies. So I was really afraid for a lot of years not to drink. So I didn't, and I don't think I had any beer till I was 40, and then I just probably in the last 5 have I really started drinking, bourbon or whiskey or some of those kinds of things. So I'm a newcomer to it. Now listen, I go all the way in, but I just I'm not I don't know. My dad never sat around talking about the flavors. Right.
Just give it to me.
Yeah. It was how cheap and how much can I, and so I hope it's a little bit different. And I hope for folks listening, I hope you guys don't take it wrong. I want you to enjoy it. It's there for that. But certainly, I don't want to cause anybody any issues if they are out there. So I appreciate you guys coming out. All right, Jay, let's get to know you. Let me reset on this. And guys, if you're in the chat room, thanks for coming out. Justin mentioned Alps and St. Bernards and dogs and rum, and that's good too. Rum will probably make a run at some point. That may be the next. That may come back, right? Rum was popular for a while, and it's not as hot today, but so maybe rum will make a. What's Justin saying? I've gone through 8 bottles of it. I have 4 left. Oh,
just
yeah.
tonight.
Justin says I have a local rye here. It's only 350-ish bottles ever produced. So you will not get it. One of the guys who does the professional tasting says it's the best he's ever had. Yeah, the rise are on the rise, I think. And I got a chance. Sorry, I said we're going to start, and then I'm going to tell this one story. I got a chance to do a Whistle Pig 12-year rye, which is like a $150 bottle at my brother-in-law's house a couple weeks ago when we were down there in Texas. And it's as good as advertised. I'm cheap, so I don't know if I'd pay $150 for it. But I made him pour it. He's like, "You want some?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're at $150 a bottle. You're pouring it. Like I don't want to get anywhere close to you blaming me that I drank all your rye." So
Bob says squirrel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got 1,000 stories. All right, let me kick this thing off. Here we go. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 544, recorded on September 1st, 2022. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation. A lot of conversation tonight, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. Fall is on its way, and of course, we post a show with some world-class show notes. This week, not a lot, probably because a lot of conversation, but we post those out at the AverageGuy.tv. Big thanks to Mike Weger, who came back and joined us last week. It's good to have him on, and I was super excited to have him back. We're going to try and book some more times, but Weger, he gets things started and then he ditches them. So we'll have to see how it goes, but it was great to have Mike back. Jay Franze is my guest tonight. Jay heard me say, "Hey, looking for some guests," and he kind of answered the bell, said, "I'd like to come on and chat with you," and I'm always up for a good chat. So Jay, welcome to Home Gadget Geeks.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. I just did it for the drink.
Yeah, you knew we did pre-show drinks, and so yeah, right on. All right, there's easier ways to do that, Jay.
But then I'm by myself, and that seems to be
yeah, it's the same thing. Like I can't do cigars by myself either. I always feel like, no, that's not right. Jay, let's get to know you a little bit give us a little bit about your background, especially from a tech perspective. Where are you from? What do you do? Some of those kinds of things.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I'm originally from Boston, living in Cincinnati. I worked the past 30 years in the entertainment industry, recording country records in Nashville. And for the past decade, I've been working in the security world, dealing with anything from the manpower to the security cameras and so on, taking care of our tech companies in Silicon Valley. Spent 3 years over there, working with all of the big companies and any one of them that has a global footprint. And then I just came back to Northern Kentucky maybe a year ago, and I've been here and trying to get schooled on my bourbon and
You're living in the land of bourbon. That's for
what I'm
sure.
saying.
Yeah, I don't know. Today, as popular as bourbon is, I don't. That probably wouldn't end well for me. So it's a good thing maybe I'm here in Omaha. But there's plenty. There's plenty to go around. You have a podcast as well. I'm going to throw the link in the chat for folks. Let's see if I still have that there. Talk a little bit about. Give us a little rundown on your podcast. What do you guys talk about?
Sure, no, happy to do so. It's called Franze and Friends. It's a show where leaders share secrets. So we talk to leaders from around the world and kind of get the insight, what's going on in their head, how they were able to make it in their career, what they did to succeed and work their way up the ladder. And we try to pull out not just the stories and what they do, and it's not an infomercial of any sort. It's really trying to get the insights of how they were able to succeed and what we can do to take their tips and tricks and apply it to our own. So we take it, apply it to our own career, and we try to move up the ladder. So it's been pretty good. We did it like everybody else. We started just before the pandemic. We were doing live shows. We were doing live shows at the office, trying to just get people in our company interested in being promoted. And we were bringing in special guests, and we were just doing that type of thing. And then as the pandemic happened, it just turned into 100% remote. And it's been remote ever since.
What have you enjoyed about the podcasting as a host and the work that you're doing as a podcaster? We're not for the tech guys. They're like, oh crap, Jim invited a podcaster on. They're going to talk about because they know I love podcasting, right? We do a show every Saturday morning, and okay, just relax. The whole show's not going to be about podcasting, but I am interested in it, and it's my show. So just listen for a few minutes. What do you find interesting in the podcasting space?
Well, we do interviews, so I find it interesting to communicate and talk to other people within my own industry as well as other industries. So we do that. It's fun getting the tips and tricks and talking with these people and getting to know them. But it's from a technology side. I love the gear. I mean, I have a table full of gear in front of me. I've got mixing consoles. I've got the Rodecaster Pro and all those type of things. I just love the technology. I love putting on the shows. We use StreamYard, similar to what you're doing tonight, and we like doing anything from the graphics to the. We spend time putting graphics together. We spend time dealing with the guests and trying to find. If we take on a guest that has a book, we take the time to read the book, and we take the time to develop graphics specifically for them. We like to share their websites. We like to make sure that they're getting something out of coming on our show, because we try to get decent guests. I mean, we get some really good guests. We've had Emmy winners, we've had Grammy winners, we've had all sorts of people in the tech world. People from Microsoft have come on. We've had Miss America, 2 Miss Americas come on. That was a treat for me.
Nice. Actually, they actually won or they were competing for it.
We've had 2 of them. One of them was Miss Arkansas, if I believe I'm remembering correctly, and I don't remember where the other one was from.
I got to interview Miss Nebraska, not here, but on the Gallup programs. We got to do that. She's doing some great work. Part of that program is they've got to do a lot of leadership stuff, a lot of mentoring, a lot of leadership type things, and try to make the world a better place. They're great interviews. She was absolutely, she was dynamite. I'm sure that's. Do you find yourself? And I'm asking this. This is me now asking this. Maybe not as a podcast host, but as Jim. Do you find you get intimidated at all by the bigger the guest, the harder they are to interview? Do you have any issues with that? Because I do. Like I really, if the guest is, the bigger the guest, the more I kind of choke on it. A little bit. How do you handle that?
Now it doesn't seem to be as much of a problem as it did at the beginning. The beginning, I had a really good guest on the show. It was a best-selling author. She was the first woman to fly the Apache helicopters in the military, and she's done these presentations for Harvard Business School, and she's written the few books, and was just countless stories and just amazing. And that was a little intimidating only because I did it by myself. I didn't have my co-host that night. So it was a little bit of a different setup than I would normally do. And I didn't want to lose the guest, and my co-host wasn't able to make it. So rather than rescheduling, we did the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, so you're saying it's gotten better over time
Oh yeah.
for you with the bigger, with the big, I've done thousands of these and I'm still like, sometimes the bigger the guest, the more effort and the harder they are to interview on the program. I don't know. Maybe it's something I just got to get over. But I actually enjoy this kind of conversation more. Now, the big deals that are out there, they like just to have a conversation too, and I need to realize that they put their pants on the same way we do, right? Or they just like to have a conversation as well. It's something I need to remember, in doing those interviews. Have you seen, as you've been interviewing leaders, have you seen any common threads through this is one of those things when you kind of focus in, we focus in on technology, you start seeing patterns, right? Have you seen patterns in these leadership interviews that have kind of risen to the top?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen a handful. One of the things we discuss is, what tools you use. So we see the same tools over and over again. We see the same type of tips of, time management, and people, how do you manage your time? And well, we do time blocking on a calendar. All that stuff is great the first time, but when you hear it over and over again, we want to take that deeper. What can we do with that? How does that make us successful? We talk about time management, but nobody actually talks about how do you turn that into something.
Yeah.
We just, we got to manage our time better. Well, how do you actually manage your time better, and those type of things? But the things that I like is when we're talking about leadership, people, they're very, very general, and it's very warm and fuzzy type conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a fan of the warm and fuzzy type conversations. I want to get to the meat of it, and I want to know what's going on. How did you do it? What steps did you take? For example, we talk about formal and informal education a lot, because in our world lately, education is starting to matter less and less and less in a formal way. But informally, it's starting to matter more and more and more. So I want to know, to the people who are up in those leadership positions, the C-suites, or the people who have made it in a particular industry, whether it be entertainment or movies, or whether it be, in the world of security that I work, or anything else. I want to know, how important do you think it is in your career? So, for example, in my world, I work in security, so we have to have a certain amount of education to get to each level of our positions. But does it matter? Is that really necessary? No, nobody ever draws back on it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I hear, well, you must have a bachelor's degree in order to apply. They don't care what the bachelor's degree is in. They just want to know that you have one. So what's the purpose of having it?
Mm-hmm.
Where for those who might not be able to go to school and get a bachelor's degree, whether it be because of finance or something else, they do have the ability to go online and take free education, whether it be courses or read books or so on and so forth, which then allows them to learn the very specific about the job they're going for. They don't have to learn the fluff or, so on. And that to me is what really matters. When you can start pulling those type of nuggets out of somebody, that matters. So get the real opinions, the real thoughts, what people are really doing to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we like to have real conversations here. We try to get to, we try to have fun with it, right? Try to get to the point. But kind of cover some of the things maybe others don't. I didn't cover this, but Shelby mentioned your Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. Is that right?
Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Yep.
And what's the easiest way if folks wanted to come out? If my listeners wanted to check it out, I threw it on the screen, but is the easiest way
franzeandfriends.com.
Okay, franzeandfriends.com.
It's very easy. Just go to the website. There's even a live stream YouTube right there that you can watch directly on the website.
You've done a lot of, and I'm getting some questions in chat, guys, and I'll get to those here in just a few minutes. Jay, you've got a background though in sound,
yes,
right? And tell me a little bit about, what does that mean? What have you done? What does it mean? I mean, sound's always a mystery to me. It's one of those kinds of things. I don't know how to make it good, but I know when it's bad for sure.
It's very easy.
Tell me a little bit about your background. Yeah, tell me a little bit about your background.
Sure. If you don't mind a quick story, I went to school right out of high school. I went to engineering school. And at the time, I'm old, so at the time, there were only one engineering school in the country, and I convinced my parents to let me go there instead of trying to do something else. And when I graduated from that school, they give you the piece of paper, the certificate you're holding on to. And I went back to Boston, and I was like, all right, here I am. I'm holding a piece of paper. Hire me. So I went to the only two recording studios that were in that town, and I went and asked for a job, and they both hired me. So I was like, oh, this is great. But they hired me as an intern,
Yeah.
or freelance is what they called it. And I had no
Right.
idea what that meant at the time, but I quickly learned it meant go out and hustle your own work, and you can do it here.
Yeah.
So, but to me, what that was at the time was recording rock bands. During the day, I recorded books on tape at one studio, and at night, I would cross the street and go to another studio where we would record rock bands. And it was great. I'd work till 2 or 3 in the morning and then wake up and do it again. But it was fun. It was something to learn all the different microphones, all the different pieces of equipment. At the time, we were recording on 16-track 2-inch tape, so the big reel-to-reel tapes, and just got to learn it all. It learned much more than I did going to school. So then, after a while, I got to a point where I wanted to take it a step further, and I moved to New York, and I worked in a studio there for quite a while, and then finally moved to Nashville. And I spent the last 20 years of that 30 in Nashville. And I was I was lucky enough to hook up with 3 different producers there that worked on 3 different types of projects. And they were very big projects. So I got to work with very big name artists and stuff that I would have never got to do on my own. So it was that networking piece. And as we talk about leadership and branding and all those type of buzzwords that people use, but really what it was is just what Nashville calls being a good hang. If you're a good hang and you can just fit in and get along with everybody, that's what people wanted. And I was able to go in the studio and record and work on some big records.
You're a Pro Tools user, and I think you told me you've even made you made some educational videos of them and work on that. When we think about a DAW like that, and would we consider Pro Tools a DAW? Is that
absolutely?
Do I have that right? Okay. So when you think about that, does the average person, like if you wanted to record some things or you wanted to do a podcast, do I have to go down the path of Pro Tools? Tell me a little bit about what it does, and then answer the question. Do I have to have it?
The quick answer is no, absolutely not. The benefits of having it are extreme, but no, you don't have to. So when we say DAW, what that stands for is Digital Audio Workstation. And it is a computer software that allows you to simulate all of the things we used to do in a recording studio. It has a console. It has inputs and outputs where we'd plug our microphones in and get the sound to go through their digital console. And it records on digital tape machine. So in a nutshell, you're just using it to mix and record and then mix down or edit audio. We used it in Nashville to work on records with musicians. In the podcast world, you're recording dialogue. So you're recording the audio from a microphone like the ones we're using today. And it just records on individual tracks, and it gives us the ability to edit and make individual changes or or any sort of editing capabilities you would like to do. You can move sections around, you can change frequencies, you can compress audio, give it that big radio sound if that's what you're looking for. All sorts of things you can do with this workstation. Even outboard gear. In the recording studios, we used to have racks of outboard gear behind us, which would be EQs, compressors, reverbs, delays. Now all that stuff's within the software. So within that software, we're able to manipulate and simulate everything we could do in a recording studio. And then when that first started, people would say, oh, it doesn't sound the same. It doesn't give you that same, sound as analog. But it doesn't. It's different. And whether or not you can notice those differences or whether or not those differences matter to you, it's personal taste. It's preference.
Yeah. We moved from, I think about the 70s of high fidelity, very, very analog, very, kind of the peak of that era, right? In the early 80s, the Walkman came and kind of took over and everybody put on headphones. right? Which still sounded amazing. I remember the first time I put on a pair of a pair of headphones from a Walkman. I'm like, oh my god, this sounds great. Well, yeah, it's really close to your
Yeah.
ears, right? Of course it sounds great, right? Those little speakers. Everybody's like, how did they do this? And of course, as we moved from the Walkman, we moved, CD quality then began to, the Walkman was cassette for those of you younger than us. And in the late 80s, of course, CDs became available. And then, of course, everything's gone digital. What's interesting is the CD is not necessarily, I mean, it is, but it's not the digital format that we think of today when we think of an MP3 or some of those kinds of things, right? A little bit different. But when you say it feels different, our listening devices have gotten smaller. We've got earbuds in, or we got canned headphones, or we're using little shelf speakers as opposed to the big gigantic speakers. How much of that is feel based on air moving into our bodies as opposed to just having earbuds in our ears and not really feeling that sound?
Sure. No, I mean, for anybody watching, I'm in a acoustically treated room right now, and it has the monitors, audio monitors in front of me, and it has in the bass traps in front. It has acoustic panels on either side. There's even a few back there on the wall. So the room is treated acoustically for a specific sound. We want the room to be as neutral as possible. So basically, all we're saying is if you play audio through these speakers, it should sound as flat as it can. You should have no exaggerated highs, no exaggerated lows. And when that happens, that then allows you to manipulate either music or dialogue or so forth, that it would balance it. So we know if we're boosting highs, that we're truly boosting highs. What you don't want is like in music, if you have, say, hip hop or R&B music that has very heavy low end. And if your room doesn't capture that low end accurately, you could be taking the low end out of your song because low end builds up very easily in a small room. So if you're taking low end out of a song and it sounds great in your room and then you go to your car, it sounds like there's no low end at all. So it's very important to have things treated properly when it comes to acoustics. But like you said, I wear headphones most of the time at this point. I'm editing dialogue on a regular basis, so I don't need to worry about the frequency of my room when I'm editing dialogue. What I'm listening for at that point is room noise. Like, can you hear an air condition humming in the background? Can you hear a lawnmower going by somebody's house? Or is there a dog barking in the background? So is there any sort of high-end frequencies that I need to manipulate to hopefully make things sound a little bit smoother?
When the pandemic hit, a lot of folks went home and we began to work that way remotely, right? And we really began to see the flaws in just audio just to work, right? I mean, it was bad. It was very bad. It still continues to be bad in some ways. I'm going to ask you in a minute. I'm going to ask you kind of about recording or about hardware that you think can help the average guy. I mean, if you think about so I'm going to ask you that here in a second. But I want to ask you about treatment first because we're looking at it on screen. You've got some wall treatment going in, and I kind of want to ask you. Certainly, yeah, as we're seeing it on video. You can head over to YouTube if you're watching the podcast if you want to see the layout there. It looks really, really nice, but certainly maybe not average guy. If you were to think about a couple tips and tricks that the average person could do to create a space for for calls, for maybe even a little bit of podcasting, maybe a little bit of recording, maybe a little YouTube kind of stuff. What are some easy things we can do to at least just get the environment around us safe, so to speak? I'm putting that in air quotes, safe for recording.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let me start by saying recording in the big studios in Nashville, they're multi-million dollar facilities that are, perfectly designed for a purpose. And you mentioned my room and you say it looks nice, and I appreciate that. Thank you, by the way, because I do enjoy it. But if you look closely, this is just my garage. I mean, so when we're talking about the average guy, I am the average guy when it comes to this because this is my garage. All I did is I bought acoustic treatments, and I wish you could see the front because they're more impressive on the front here. But the acoustic treatments are really what makes the difference because what they help you do is they help the sound from reflecting off the walls, from hard surfaces. But you don't need to spend money on acoustic treatments. You can put a quilt up, just hang a quilt. My wife has a photography stand, and you can just clip a quilt and put it in front of you because you're just talking. And as you talk into something, it keeps it from reflecting back into the microphone, giving that room noise that we typically hear. A real easy thing to do is go record in a closet, a walk-in closet.
I've heard that said. Dave Jackson says that, I podcast with Dave on Saturday mornings, and he always talks about I couldn't do that. That would be too close. That'd be well, that too. I never thought of it that way. It'd be too claustrophobic for me. I need kind of an open area. Blankets, soft furniture, soft things. Right now, we can't get away from. We got monitors. I have too many monitors in front of me. I have 9. I just put up my 10th, this one here today.
Nice.
I have a lot of hard surfaces around me, but my lights have umbrellas. That's a soft surface. I've got some equipment down here, some shelving that we've kind of softened a little bit, right? Put some things in there to capture that sound. Are there other things that you can think of to help people to get that? Because you've taken that call from somebody and they sound like they're in an echo chamber and they're doing it on purpose. You're like, did you try and do this? So anything else you can think of to help, just help the average guy get a little bit better, softer sound at times?
Absolutely. If you look at your room, I can see in the back of you, it looks like you have a curtain to one side of you and you have a bookshelf behind you. Okay. So the curtain helps soften things, right? And the bookshelf helps disperse sound. So what you don't want is when you hit a hard surface, if it's flat, that reflection is just going to come right back at you. If you hit a bookshelf, books are all different heights, different depths, different widths, and that's going to disperse the sound. So you don't need to have the fancy acoustic treatments that will be diffusers. You can just put a bookshelf behind you, just like you have right there. That, I don't even know if you did it on purpose or not, but it does wonders. So let's say you did it on purpose.
Yeah, I totally thought it out.
Yeah, I know you did. We were talking about that. That was a great idea. But yes, so I mean, the bookshelf definitely helps, and it helps to have it behind you, because what happens is the reflections you put out come back to you, and you don't want them to come back into the mic. What you want them to do is disperse away from it. So that definitely helps. The curtain behind you definitely helps. I work with my co-host, and she's fantastic, and we were doing something extremely similar with her. He says she's the average lady. Miss Fola, thank you. But Miss Fola has been my co-host, and she does the same thing. We put a curtain up beside her just recently because her sound was a little bit too much of a room. So absolutely. No, I think those are definitely things we could do. Other things you can do is just like the foam here on the microphone, the little windscreen. Depends on what type of microphones you're using. Dynamic microphones versus condenser microphones, using the proper polar patterns when you're doing that. There's all sorts of little tricks we can do in our settings as well. So if you want anything like that, just let me know.
Well, let's talk about settings, because I think that's sometimes, we're doing Zoom calls or we're recording here on StreamYard, and we don't necessarily, we connect. I mean, I spend, I make my guests at work come 30 minutes early. By the way, let me answer this question. Katie J asked, what's your profession? So Katie J, and by the way, Jay, your audience, this has been the best audience coming over to listen. I think a lot of the folks that are out there tonight came over from your podcast. So nice job. Thank you for doing that. We have a ton of fun over here. I don't want to compete. I'm not here to steal sheep. That's not what I do. We wanted to have an interesting conversation with you. But Katie J, I am a podcaster now. I'm a full-time podcaster for Gallup here in Omaha, Nebraska. So that's all I do all day. I organize, I execute, I deploy and promote our podcasting infrastructure, as well as do community management for Gallup. So I spend time with about 13,000 of our certified coaches around the world. I don't ever sleep because it's global, and I'm just I'm out there all the time with them. But oftentimes when I get my guests on, I have to spend the first 10 minutes, and we plan 30. So I make sure I've got plenty of time with them of getting their sound adjusted. Jay, tell us a little bit about what can the average person, and I'll change it to that. When I say guy, I'm a California guy. Guy is
everybody.
plural neutral for me. Anyways, I know not everybody it's that way.
I'm a
So
Yankee.
we'll
We
say
say you guys.
person.
Use guys.
Use guys. Hey, use guys. Um, but what can we do? What are some tricks that we can do? What should we be looking at for the average person on settings?
Well, first of all, an external microphone will do a world of difference.
It really does.
Whether it be USB, whether you use an XLR converter or so on. External microphone makes a world of difference. You can get them in any different variety and any different price point. So you have those that are sub $100 and you have those that are, thousands plus. So do they make the biggest difference from brand to brand, from, price point to price point? They make subtle differences in most cases. Things you might notice if you put them side by side, but probably not things you're going to notice if you just use them a one-off. So, nice. So the microphone matters. The windscreen on the microphone really matters. What you don't want is plosives and that type of stuff. The mic placement is a real easy thing to do to help a new person. If you put the microphone, mine's slightly angled. I'm not talking directly into it because if I was, it would sound boomier and it would lend itself to more of the popping P's. So by talking past the microphone, you're saving the plosives, and like I said, the windscreen helps. As far as other pieces of gear or the microphone settings, polar patterns, cardioid, absolutely cardioid. Pick cardioid if you're going to do this. If you don't know what that is, it's the symbol that looks more like a heart shape. But you want that because it's going to take the sound from the front of the microphone, not the back. So it kind of rejects the sound from any other angle other than the one it's pointed at. So this particular microphone is cardioid. It's pointing towards my mouth. Even though I'm not talking directly into it, that is what it's doing. So it's a cardioid pattern. You can choose super or hyper cardioid too. It's just a narrower point. So I think that matters.
Hey, what are you using? What's your mic there? What do you have?
This is the Shure SM7B.
And $600 maybe on that microphone, five, something like that.
Something like that.
I'm using a Audio Technica ATR 2100. They have a 2100X. Samsung SON has a Samsung Q2U it's right at the $100 price point. And I've been tempted, Jay, to buy the more expensive mics, but because I do this average guy thing, I'm well, I kind of need to be like, and I think this is the perfect mic for everybody. It's one of those kinds of things. And I think some folks, when we moved to Zoom, thought, oh yeah, just the microphone on my camera will be fine, or the microphone on the computer. And unless you have a really good Mac, no. In most cases, it sounds terrible. The problem is, Jay, is people won't tell them that they sound terrible. Like other people don't know. This is the thing. You and I have a curse. We get on a call and we immediately are trying to fix their audio. Like, hey, let's take a second. Let's take a second to fix your audio.
Or adjust that.
Yeah. Are we coming in from your, I've seen people have a headset on. And by the way, headsets, they make some really good headsets now. One of the things the pandemic did was forced Logitech and Plantronics and what's the other name? It forced them to make really good headsets, and they're in that $150 to $250 range, and they sound really good. They're comfortable, have a good microphone. You get that microphone super close, and then you get way better audio. But the reason I asked you about settings is because oftentimes they jump on the call and they don't have the settings right. So we're still, they got this headset. We're still coming out of there. And I'm always surprised how many people are uncomfortable by headsets or even microphones, right? They get intimidated by these things. I always tell people, don't worry about it. It makes you sound great. But how do you get people past that intimidation factor of, having a really good microphone?
No, that's a good point. I don't think, like I said, I don't think a microphone matters. If you talk about the average guy, and your microphone very good, by the way, because it's XLR and USB, so you have the functionality, the ability to do either or, and it's a great sounding microphone, and you're using the windscreen. It's by default a cardioid microphone. Probably does not even have any other settings on it.
No settings.
And it, I don't even think it has a filter on it. But if it did have a filter on it, there's these things called high pass or low cut filters.
No
and
filters.
they cut out the low frequencies. This particular microphone does have that. It has a high pass filter, and it also has enhancement just to boost the high end a little bit. So those are some settings you can tweak. But as far as just the intimidation factor, most people, when they come onto the show, I send them a prep sheet just so they know what to expect. Please wear headphones, otherwise you can end up having echo over the microphone and those type of things. Earbuds, the earbuds that come with your phone are fantastic. They work, they're great, they sound good, they're right up in your ear, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not using the microphone on that. You're just using the headphone portion.
Correct. Yeah.
And we talk about average guy again. You're talking about earbuds that are about $150, which are fantastic. But these headphones here, these are studio headphones. They're made by AKG, which is a great brand. They sound amazing. They're $50.
Mm.
You know, so I bought 2 sets. I've got one set to my left and one to my right, depending on what piece of equipment I'm using. So I love them that much that I was willing to invest in 2 pairs.
Yeah.
And like I said, for $50, and they absolutely sound amazing.
What's funny is on this podcast, I've always done it with earbuds. So I don't like the look with cans. But at work, I use a headset most of the time. Now, for the work podcasts, the last couple of years I've been doing them at home. I have a studio at work as well, and I use earbuds in the studio. But when I'm doing regular calls, I just throw my headset on. It's a lot easier than putting earbuds in and going to the microphone, bringing the microphone over. I did find the microphone intimidated some people, so I was like, okay, I'll just go with a regular headset and get that done. But I think the advice I always have is do the thing that works for you. Like do it. One of the advantages to having a microphone like this, and I run it through a Mo2 M2 audio device. So XLR out into that, and then it amplifies it. You get an amplified sound of your own voice back into your ears, so you know exactly how you sound. Sometimes I've got a pair of Logitech headphones at work, and it's muffled. And so I find myself talking a little bit louder. I mean, I talk loud already. Let's just be really clear about that. And so I find myself talking a little bit louder in those. I've got to figure out a way to amp those up in my own ears. If I'm going to use them long term, they have a great microphone on them. But it's not going to make a difference if I'm yelling at people, as I'm talking to them. Couple questions coming in. I told the chat room I would get to questions. So Jay, let's take a few questions. Justin asked the question. Justin, hopefully you got to stay with us. He was having some bandwidth problems to stay around, but he says, do those isolating mounts. And I have one right here, actually. This is a built-in kind of isolating. It separates the microphone from the arm that hopefully if I tap the desk or something dropped on it would break the sound between the arm and the mic. But Justin says, do those isolating mounts like the Rode SM2 make a big difference? Jay, there's certainly a variety of these, all kinds of crazy wires and stuff. Some are huge, some are small. What's been your experience with those?
They make a huge difference. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Like you were saying, if you bump the desk, like I'm, hitting my desk right now, it is not making any noise over the microphone. I mean, if I move the arm, you can hear the squeaking of the hinges, but you wouldn't hear any noise from the vibrations to the microphone. Mm-hmm. So the squeaking of the hinges is probably something I should work on.
a little bit of grease on those, maybe a little bit of oil.
So yeah, I think those mounts matter. I think depending on the microphone, like this particular microphone has built-in shock, and it works very well. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people use this microphone. I know some people use it because they like the way it looks. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a great sounding microphone, and it has all of the features you would want for dialogue. Mm-hmm. We've used it on guitar amps. I mean, we've used it on everything. So, I mean, it's a great all-around microphone, but it is fantastic for dialogue. The microphone you have is a great microphone for dialogue. The setup you have with the arm as well as the mount, everything there is fantastic. I like your arm. I mean, this arm here, it's a good arm. It's really nice. It's really sturdy, and it probably cost me more than I needed to spend. Where Rode, I don't know what model you have.
I think it's a PS1.
So those I like better because they're easier to move. So as long as you don't put something on it that's too heavy, they move very easily. They don't make any noise. This one, like I said, squeaks like crazy. So sometimes spending the more money isn't worth spending the more money.
Right.
This microphone's a little heavier than that microphone, so that could could possibly cause a problem. The other microphone I like is the Rode, what's it, the Rodecaster,
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
the little one, not the big one. The big one's great too, but the little one, the Rodecaster or the Rode whatever it is.
Yeah, I'll look it up here while you're talking.
But I've recommended it to a handful of people. And it's a great microphone, but it doesn't come with a windscreen, so it's something that you need to invest in something extra. Otherwise, you're popping peas and you're creating a lot of sibilance.
It's just as a side note, I've been watching a lot of YouTube over the last couple of years, and a lot of YouTubers are moving to these Rode Wireless Go 2 mics,
Oh yeah,
and they're just clipping them here, and
Well,
it's totally changing the sound on YouTube. It's so much better now when they do that.
you mentioned intimidation. There's a way to get rid of all the intimidation of a microphone. A lavalier microphone, the headset for beginners. The headset's fantastic because you don't have to keep telling them to talk into the microphone. We deal with a lot of people who put a microphone in front of themselves and then start turning around and changing direction, and you can't hear them anymore.
Yeah.
So those are one of the things. The lavalier is great. We have a set of lavaliers here in the studio when we do in-person stuff, but that's been very rare these days.
Yeah, it's been interesting. When those first came out, they were big and boxy, and I actually made some comments like I didn't like what they look like, and I didn't like it when people wore them on their shirts, and I was like, that thing looks dumb, and then all of a sudden I started noticing, man, the audio on YouTube has gotten so much better over the last 2 years or so. Well, it's these wireless Go 2s. Everybody's got them, and
new ones.
they're putting a little windscreen on it, and they're just putting it right here. You don't hear the rubbing.
Right.
You're getting really good audio out of them. It's a great way. It'll sync. They sync with any camera, and I shouldn't say any, but most cameras. By the way, the Rode Pod mic, I think, is what you were thinking of. Yeah, $100, and I guess the
sounds fantastic and it looks fantastic. It's a great looking microphone.
It does look good. You'd want to put a windscreen on it for sure of some kind, either a flat one on the front or I kind of prefer these foam ones. They're not quite as intrusive as the flat ones are.
Plus, if you hit it, you're not going to cut yourself.
Yeah. It doesn't make a sound. I think for a lot of people, if they would just up their game a little bit with a headset, and for gamers, if you're a gamer and you have a gaming headset, just use it. Like, it sounds really good, right? In a lot of cases, it's going to be a lot better than you coming through. We started buying Lenovo's at the beginning of me and Gallup started buying Lenovo's at the beginning of the pandemic. And I got issued a brand new one just a week before we got sent home. And that microphone on that thing sounds like it got taken out and stepped on, and then someone poured water on it, and then they stepped on it again, and then put it back in and hooked it up backwards.
Yeah.
So it's horrible. I mean, it's the most terrible mic. When the other day when I was on with somebody, and this was kind of one of our muckety mucks who was doing this presentation, I had to send a note on the side. I'm like, you should have somebody look at your laptop. Like, that mic is definitely broken. And nobody had the guts to tell her that. She's been doing this for a year maybe with this terrible sound. It's awful. And so I've tried to encourage people, if you can at least get a headset. If this is too complicated for you, oftentimes a headset can fix it. Something like that. Any other thoughts on that, Jay?
Placement. Mic placement's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like we said, the patterns and all that stuff. And you talk about intimidation. Intimidation can be on both sides, right? So if you're the guest on one of these shows that you're not used to doing and not used to being in front of a microphone, the intimidation of how to use it, how to talk into it, where to place it, all of those things are intimidating, and you don't want to be thinking about that when you're trying to answer questions. So then the other thing to do is the intimidation of seeing the host who's on the other side with, the expensive gear and the headphones, and they look like they're trying to be a radio DJ, and we're just going out doing the whole 9 yards, and then the guest gets on, they go, oh boy, do I not have the right stuff? Am I okay? And then they start being self-conscious of their camera or their microphone that's in their computer. And so I think when we're dealing with intimidation, it goes in both directions. We need to just talk to people and just let them know.
Mm-hmm.
We do the
Mm-hmm.
same thing you do before a show. We send out a pre-packet and we let them know what to expect. And then when they come on the show, we spend 20 or so minutes just talking to people and just making things comfortable and letting them know what we're going to do. And we tweak the sound. Even in StreamYard, it has some sound settings that we tweak. But yeah, it's just all about settings. So I have the Rodecaster Pro off to my right here, and we change the settings in those. Myself and my co-host both have a Rodecaster Pro, so we change the noise gate and all of the different settings within there.
Mm-hmm. But that's really an advanced option, right? I think
It is.
in the early days we'd buy mixers,
Yes.
right? We'd buy Yamaha or I'm trying to think, what did I
Even
have?
Behringer is the low cost, and
Yeah,
Mackie is a reasonable
Mackie.
price.
I ruined two Mackie mixers with wine. Like I spilled wine. I just put wine right in front of it, and then I knocked it over. And of course, you get anything in those sliders, you're done. I just stuck right to it, right? We would do advanced sound with mixers. Today, the Rodecaster Pro really kind of replace, and they have a Pro too.
Yep.
There's a couple competitors in there of some things like that. The Mix Pre,
Yep.
3 and 6. They're kind of advanced, and I think for most people they don't need that much if
No,
they can get
absolutely
a.
not.
Mhm, yeah, I think at the very basic level is some kind of audio device. Prosonic, no Sonic. Why am I think
ProSonus.
Prosonic, yeah, Presonus. There we go. It must be the bourbon and
I've got
the
their
beer
mixer
kicking
right
in.
in front of me.
Presonus, Focusrite,
Yep.
right?
Focusrite is amazing.
They make
Focusrite makes
these,
amazing gear.
yeah, and they turn a microphone like this into magic, and then they give you audio back, so you can. And we're talking another $100 to $200. But it kind of gets us there. Bob, producer Bob, had asked when or why do people add something like a cloud lifter? First, Jay, what is a cloud lifter, and then why would you add it to your SM7B?
Sure. A cloud lifter is also known as a bump box. And basically, what a bump box is a microphone like this is power hungry. So it requires a lot of power to produce the sound from this type of microphone. In a lot of others, it's not just this one. But this one specifically, it takes a lot of power to generate it. And a bump box just boosts the decibel level. So that way, when you plug it into your mixer, it's now at a normal level that any other microphone you would plug into that mixer would be. So the new Rodecaster Pro 2, their preamps are powerful enough that you don't need the bump box. I'm using the original Rodecaster Pro here, and I do have a cloud lifter on it. So cloud lifter being the brand name, but I have the
Right.
bump box on here. But that's a great point because the bump box is another $150. So if we're talking about the average person buying this microphone and then for $500 and then a bump box for another $150, now you're talking about a lot of money. Where if you buy the Rode Pod mic for $100, you're great. You're golden. You don't need it. Or some of those sub $100 microphones are also fantastic.
Yeah. Five. If you can still purchase the original version, about 500 now. There's some deals on those because the Rodecaster Pro 2s are now out, and those are 700. It's an expensive solution. If that's what you want to get into, then they're worth looking at. They're certainly I think they're the leaders in the space right now. And I think at this point, if you were going to say, do I buy the Pro One or do I use the first version and save the money, or I go to the second version? It's like one of those things like Windows where they get better each version that comes out, and you might want to spend a few extra dollars on the. Have you have you have the original, Jay?
I do. I have the original,
Yeah.
and I thought about upgrading and what the benefits would be to do so. And for me, the benefits do not make enough sense.
Mm.
And I am that type of guy that when something new comes out, I usually go for it. So for me to tell you that it's not worth going for it probably means something. And I don't say that lightly because the new device is amazing. But to me, there's a couple things about it that make it so I don't feel it's needed. I don't need the extra features. I'm not a gamer. I don't need those style of features. I literally just use it as a sound mixer. I do use the pads. One of the features that I think is amazing that I wish this one did have versus the two is the hard buttons on the front that allow you to switch the different screens of the sound pads. So right now it's a soft button on the screen, and it would make it a lot easier to toggle between sound effects pages if I had that. So if I were to buy one new, if I was going to buy it now, I would definitely buy the two. But if you had the one and you were talking about upgrading, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah. Listen, I podcast full time, and I don't have any intention of buying either one. For me, it's more than I want. It's more than I need. I mean, you see tonight, I don't do a lot of the trickery that all those things can do. I don't play sound effects. I don't. For me, my setup works the way I want it to.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying you don't. I mean, think through that kind of decision and kind of be like, do I need that? I don't think I do. And I probably won't buy the Rodecaster Pro 2. I just don't. And I'm a podcaster. Now, I'm probably an unusual podcaster from that perspective, although ones that I've talked to want it for sure. But I just don't do the fancy stuff. Yeah.
I absolutely love it and wouldn't do it without it. I think it's an amazing device. But again, is it a necessity? No. The sound pads are cool. You know, they get overused when people sit there and use all the buzzers and that's great. If that's the type of show you're producing, it's fantastic. You can't do it any better way. But for me, doing this type of stuff, it might work for a pre-recorded, sound clip I want to fly into a live show, things like that. But I don't even do that. No, I just like it, for what it does. It's got a built-in headphone amp. It's got a built-in recorder, so I can do backup recordings for all of my shows right on the Rodecaster Pro. So for me, that gives me a third level of backup. I've got the Rodecaster Pro recording. I've got the StreamYard recording. And then I've got the backup on YouTube. So if I ever need to pull it down and strip it from there, I can do that.
Yeah.
So, but to my left, I've got a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, which is what I use with Pro Tools. So for me, the Rodecaster is 100% broadcasting only. So it's literally just the podcast. But the Scarlett 2i2 on my left is the I/O interface. Ins and outs is what I/O stands for. Yep. And it's the I/O box that I use for Pro Tools. So it's what powers my two audio monitors in front of me to listen to. That's what my other set of headphones is plugged into. And it's what I have two microphone inputs if I need to record something on there. So I do that. And I do have a couple other microphones. I am kind of a tech junkie. I like all the new toys, and I've got the lights attached to the desk and all the stupid things are all around me just because I like it. And I talk about it so much. I've got the Stream Deck over here on my right side. I like toys.
You mentioned lights, and we'll kind of wrap the podcast discussion up with that. And then I've got a question on some general gadget stuff, but
sure.
What's your rule of thumb? I mean, I think lighting, when I was first podcasting, I didn't really understand lighting. And it took the host of the show that I was, we were starting to do more and more video. And there were two things. I had a squeaky chair and I had terrible lighting. And I just didn't know how bad it was. And he sent me some Cowboy Studio, which I think has been bought a couple times since then. But he sent me some basic lights to kind of diffuse and get some of that lighting up. But how important is it? What kind of ways have you seen to get lighting, again, for the average person?
Well, the average person doesn't need any of the fancy stuff. You put a light in front of you, maybe one on the ground behind you, and that is more than enough for you to do a podcast or talk to people or any of the stuff that we're doing. You can notice when I lean in like this, the room behind me gets dark. And then when I back up, it lightens up, and that's because of the lights in front of me. And they're just LED lights. If anybody's familiar with the Elgato lights, these are knockoffs of the Elgatos. They're just cheap, probably $100 lights. They're nice. They work. They have a nice little remote to them, so you can change the different colors and you can change the brightness. but they don't dim enough for me. So right now, for me, especially being bald, that's another reason for the headphones, Jim. It makes me look like I have a little bit more hair. But they don't dim enough.
Yeah.
So to me, they're very bright. And they're on the darkest setting and their lowest brightness, and they're still a little bright. But there's two. There's one in front of me on each side. And then I have others that are in the ceiling that are LED lights that shine down and kind of give that backlight effect, which is great if you want to do that. But do you need it? No, absolutely not.
No.
Just having something in front of you just so you light up. A light in front of you makes all of the difference in the world.
It really does. We, when I send folks on the road or when they're on the road and we're trying to podcast from a hotel room, I'll say, is there any kind of light we can put in front of you? They want to get all the way up against the wall. I'm like, can we back up a little bit and get some light in front of you? I've seen some podcasters buy the ring lights, and I'm a little mixed on those because if you put them directly in front of you, they put rings in your eyes, and that looks a little creepy, just to be honest, right?
Yeah, I don't like the ring light just for that reason.
Yeah, and although I tell them they can diffuse that, there's some things you can do. There's some plastic you can put over them to diffuse that. You need to get some fairly thick plastic so that it diffuses all of the ring in there. Mike Howard, who is a good friend of ours here on the podcast until he passed away just a couple of years ago, he would take milk cartons. He'd take a light and then he'd take a milk carton, just clean it out, cut the top off, and put it right over the top of the light and use it as a diffuser, right? And it's brilliant. I mean, it worked great. His lighting was great, right? Now, we've never lived in a better era of light bulbs. There are so many different tunable, color tunable, smart. I mean, they're expensive. We used to spend 79 cents on a incandescent light bulb. Now you're spending $15, right, on a smart bulb. But there's so many, like you showed the remote, there's so many options now to be able to control that light and then control the temperature of the light, right, as well. You've got it on the lowest setting because you're trying to draw out the most color for you. I actually have
still bright.
We're kind of white, Jay.
It's closer.
Kind of the nature of the beast. Devil. Yeah. Well, part of it's your camera too, in that because that sensor is so small, it's struggling. It'll do the same thing here. It gets a little darker as I get a little bit closer. That sensor's so small, it can't do a lot of things. I mean, we won't have time to talk about cameras. That's a whole nother podcast. But I actually have two lights up here. One's tuned to really white. The other's tuned to the more of the daytime kind of yellow, I guess is the term, yellow, orange, whatever. And I mix them together. Listen, I'm the gadget guy. I should be using tunable lights, but these things need to burn out first.
Well, you mentioned going to a hotel. All you have to do is every hotel has those floor lamps. Just take the shade off of it, or just tilt the shade a little bit. You also mentioned the diffusers, and this, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I will tell you, I worked in a TV studio for a while, and the guy that was running it, the lights were too bright, so he took his underwear and he hung it over a light. So he had the tighty whities acting as the diffuser, and it worked. It worked like a champ.
Yeah,
but
I think
you have a different idea.
With lighting, you can get really creative, and I think this is the golden era of lighting. I mean, you got to work a little bit at it. You got to kind of understand temperatures, right? That's how they use Ks, right? They use starts at 1,000 and it goes to 9,000, I think. And we generally like somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 K. That's what's kind of good for color. But everybody's situation is a little bit different. And, if you're in a situation where you're trying to get a little bit better lighting for this kind of thing, listen, every single webcam has a pinpoint sensor in it right now. They're just not very big unless you've upgraded to a real camera or something like that. They have a little tiny sensor. More light is better. Jay, I know you say maybe not for you right now, but for most people, more light is better, right? They just don't have enough light. And that's something certainly easy to fix with. Heck, even they have Philips makes some strip lighting that you could put on your ceiling. You could just tack it up on your ceiling and then turn it on in the app. and you can tune that thing to anything you want. Put it in the front of you, put it up high in the front and in a ways so it kind of shines down on you. And that
That's what
strip lighting.
I have
Yeah.
two up here that are LEDs, and they're adjustable. But get this, I don't know who designed this, but the control is up in the ceiling. So you
Right,
have to take
right,
the
right.
light out of the ceiling to adjust it. So
Yeah,
they've
that's
never.
dumb.
I've set them one time, and they've been that way ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. They've gotten a lot better, and their smart lighting has come light years just in the last couple years. And it used to be all over the place, and it's starting to consolidate a little bit better, starting to get a little bit easier. Philips is, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like you're going to look, it's the most expensive option, Philips, but they have an ecosystem that kind of works all together. There's a lot of different systems that do that as well. Jay, you mentioned backlighting, and I've never really understood the concept of like having a light behind me. I've never understood that. Can you tell me why it's important to have? I don't have
Sure.
one, but why is it important to have a light behind me?
If you have a light that typically sits on the floor behind you and shines up and captures the back of your head, usually it lights up. And this is going to sound funny. It lights up your hairline. For those listening, I'm as bald can be. But it lights up your hairline, and it breaks you from the background of the wall, because you can see my wall behind me. That's a good distance behind me. It's a garage, so it's the length of a car or so behind me. But it's dark, so having a light behind you would light up the silhouette, the edge of your head, and it just lightens you up and breaks you from the background. That's all it does.
Okay.
Is it necessary? No. Does it make it look much nicer? Absolutely.
Yeah, I never understood that, like a backlight, until now. I've got some trickery going on here that's kind of doing that for me, but it was one of those things when I got a set and they had a little, I had two big stands and then a little tiny stand. I was like,
Yeah.
what's this for? Did they, and somebody told me like it's for backlighting, and I'm like, you backlight stuff, you know, really? Well, it's a lot like what we're doing with TVs today. Is everybody's putting lights behind they're getting these big screens, and then they're putting colored lights behind it, and then you can even get smart lights that will adapt to what's on the TV.
Right.
So the lights are changing, right? And it's important, right? It really makes it look, hey, just take a monitor, turn the lights off, it looks stupid. Put a backlight behind it and turn the lights off, it looks super cool, right? Because
Yeah.
to your point, it brings the outline of it out, right?
Yep.
It shows
And
the outline.
one more little trick, and I'll say this only because my wife used to yell at me all the time. We both wear glasses, and you were talking about the ring light reflections and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
These glasses, like yours, are anti-reflective.
Mhm.
But before, I didn't have those. And you could see everything on my computer screen. You can see the lights. If you go back and look at some of my older videos, you can literally see
No, for sure.
everything through my glasses. Now you can see kind of if I look up.
If you look up, this is why, I have the camera up here, but I'm looking down. That's to kind of keep the lighting, like, to try to keep the lighting reasonable. Otherwise, because, yeah, you can kind of, if I look up, you can kind of see the lighting.
My
And
camera is slightly above my head.
yeah, and that's kind of where you want it, right? You kind of want it. I wish mine was a smidge lower, but it is what it is. And I don't care enough. Like, this is good enough for me.
That's how I
And
feel, Jim.
yeah, there's people all the time are like, look at the camera, or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I just don't care enough, to be
Well, I do
honest.
this, and like I'm looking at you right now. The screen's directly in front of me, but if I look into the camera, I have to be looking almost at myself.
Right.
So if
Right.
I look at you, I'm kind of slightly looking off to the side. But no,
Yeah, Bob says maybe if he didn't have 10 screens, it'd be
right.
easier to play. Oh, you're right, Bob.
Yeah.
You're right, producer Bob. You're right about that. It's
Bob's my new best friend.
I got them all over the place. Listen, this is another area where the technology is getting better. They've got mounts where you can put it in front of your picture or put it in front of the picture of the guest, so that you're looking through it.
Right.
They've got teleprompts. They've got some of those kinds of things.
My co-host has a teleprompter, and she puts the camera behind there, and I just
no,
it's an audio podcast.
Yeah,
we
right.
We just stream it, so I focus more on the audio.
No, right on. Well, Jay, thanks for walking us through all that. I do want to ask you a question kind of on the way out as you think about your own, besides the sound stuff that you do, if you think about the gadgets that are around you, what's a gadget you can't live without, but that's not a work related or sound related, or what's a gadget you can't live without?
I'll give you a couple. Obviously, I'm
Yeah.
going to give you the main one that everyone's going to say is you can't live without your phone,
Yeah, sure.
because the phone is just the connection to everything we
And
do these days.
iPhone, Android, what's your
I
flavor?
am in the Apple ecosystem,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
I have the iPhone. I have which one? The Mac Mini in front of me here. I have the Apple, the MacBook Pro, all of those things.
Yep.
So definitely an Apple person. The I'm gonna go old school for a minute with you in TiVo, dude. That changed everything. I don't know if
Oh.
you remember when
Oh
TiVo
yeah.
first came
Oh
out.
yeah.
I
Oh, for
mean,
sure.
it
They've been
came
around
out
a long
before
time.
any
Yeah.
other DVR or anything. That truly changed my world. So now it's hard to watch any sort of live TV or anything like that. Home stuff. My wife wants to put the Ring doorbell in.
Hmm.
We have the devices, I'll call them so we don't set them off, all around the house.
Yeah.
We have all of them, the Amazon related ones, like I have beside me here, and I use it a lot more often than I ever thought I would.
Yeah.
We have the Google one and the Apple one, so I mean we have quite a bit of stuff here. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
like gadgets. I like all sorts of
Yeah.
gadgets.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got them all over.
Oh, you
I
mentioned the recorder earlier.
yeah.
The Zoom H6.
Okay.
If you want to just record things or a podcast without having any sort of real setup, like you don't need to worry about the DAWs, the DAWs like we talked
Right.
about. You
Right.
don't need to worry about any of that. Literally, tiny little handheld box, plug two microphones into it, and talk to somebody.
Hmm.
And you get
Yeah. Those are easy.
amazing quality.
Those are easy and fairly cheap. I think 400, 4, 5, 600, depending
Oh,
on
yeah.
which one you get.
I think, yeah, they have all sorts of levels from
Yeah.
Zoom, whatever, up to
Yeah.
8 now. I
Yeah.
bought the 8 first and I returned it and got the 6. Only because the 8 was just too bulky and it's kind of shaped like a spider and just it was a little weird to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
No, right on.
and then one more thing to add to
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
don't worry about quality settings. Like the standard everyday CD quality is 16-bit 44.1.
Okay.
That's it. So stick to 16-bit 44.1. In the world of recording country records, we would do 24/48. Some people would go higher, but the reality is you can't hear more than that anyway.
Yeah.
So
I definitely can't hear any more than that because I was in the military. I'm half deaf
there
at
you
this
go.
point. I've lost. There's some apps you can do on your phone to like they're dog training apps, and they have a little whistle, and you can change the frequency of the whistle, right? And it starts at human hearing and then goes way off the chart. I only hear the very bottom ones, and then they're going. And if they're like, "Oh no, you should still hear this one," I'm like, "Yeah, no,
No,
I got nothing.
no.
I got nothing." So I am glad we don't have to podcast in any of those frequencies. In fact, I end up podcasting with guys a lot. I have the ladies on the podcast from time to time too, but I still have some of that low hearing left in there,
Just
and
some.
so just some. It's not all there. It's still not all there because I was around tanks and some
Oh
of
yeah.
those kinds of things that have ruined all those frequencies. But and some of it's just getting old too. We get old, and the ears just don't quite work
What?
as well as they used to.
Yeah.
So.
My ears definitely don't work.
Well, and I grew up in the 80s, so we put headphones on and blasted them. That's what that I'm sure that didn't help either. Although I don't know how much different blasting these things are than, which are earbuds, than having cans on.
No, they're worse.
They got to be worse because they're right there on the eardrum.
They're right on your eardrum, and they produce the higher frequencies at screech.
Jay, take a second. Your co-host has been jumping in here for your podcast. Remind folks again one more time your podcast. What is it? What do you do? and why should folks listen to it?
Fola is funny. She likes to be mentioned. I'm sorry, Miss Fola. Fola Allaby, FolaAllaby.com is the co-host. Franze and Friends.com is where you can find the show. We talk to leaders from around the world, all different industries, not one specific, and we like to drag out the tips and tricks that people can give to climbing the ladder in whatever industry they would like to. So it is definitely not centered on one industry. We work in multiple. I work in security these days, working with all the big tech companies and federal companies, and we provide physical and camera related security to these locations. And Ms. Fola is a project manager. She's a leader in the project management field. So you get two different viewpoints. And like I said, we just try to pull out the tips and tricks.
Sweet. Love it. Maybe we should have you back on, Jay, to talk about the camera. Can you talk much about what you do for work with that?
We have some amazing technology.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely amazing things, from robots to camera systems to AI-driven camera systems to the interactive stuff. I mean, we've got cameras that'll talk to people that start to approach on property. They'll start communicating because they're run by a global command center.
Right.
So you got people watching them, and they can communicate through the camera. We've got these robots. We got one that looks like a dog. We've got one that looks like R2D2 that goes through. It's amazing. Goes through parking garages and stuff.
Now that's interesting.
I mean,
now we interviewed a guy who is, and the name of the company is escaping me. Maybe somebody in the chat room will. I'm at the end of my Guinness, so it's escaping me. But where we talked about the AI components, because in cameras, AI is important to. I always kind of wondered, like, well, why is this so important? Well, it's to knock out the false positives, right? It's so that you're not alerting on every single movement, right? Yeah. Including wind moving the trees, right? From that kind of deal. But I'd be real interested in hearing about some of these other devices that you guys, if you can talk about
absolutely.
it.
No, we've got so many. There's so much cool stuff out there. We've got handheld devices. We've got the cameras, the robots, the dog robot, all that stuff.
Uncle Marv wants to know, does your dog robot carry a machine gun?
Uncle Marv, you are the best. Yes. As a matter of fact, AK-47.
Oh boy. Yeah, we'll look at some open dates as we get into October, November, and see if we get you back. Talk specifically about some of those security gadgets. That'd be kind of cool to bring those on and talk about you. Jay, thanks for coming out and being a part of the show. And thanks to your listeners as well who showed up tonight. Appreciate you guys coming out. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv. If you guys want to join us again, that'd be great. If not, that's okay too. I've got a regular group of listeners who come out and join us. But Bob does a good reminder to smash that like button if you want to do that. Again, I don't live for that. My self-worth isn't tied up in that. But if you want to, it's always helpful for the show. So before you go on the way out, click the like button. And that's always kind of nice right there on YouTube. Also, a reminder that theaverageguy.tv, powered by Maple Grove Partners, gets secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. And if you're just new, we've got a great, he used to be on the podcast. He works for Amazon now, but he's got his own hosting service called Maple Grove Partners, and it's really dynamite. If you're looking to set up a website, he's one of the best. And so you can check it out. MapleGrovePartners.com. Plans start as little as $10 a month, and he specializes in podcasters. So because he built the service around me, which is super cool. And Christian's a great guy. So check him out as well. If you want to join the conversation in our Discord group, that's really where most of the activity goes these days. Head out to theaverageguy.tv/Discord. If you haven't jumped on the Patreon bandwagon and want to support the show, super helpful. Helps me pay for some things and do some upgrades. And I'm getting ready to build a VR box that we're going to do. I'm going to try out some of this podcasting stuff in the VR world. My son is all into it, and he's like, Dad, you got to get out here on this thing. This is like the wild, wild west. This is like when you first started on the internet in 1997. Okay, but you actually need a pretty good machine. Bob and Ryan are coming on the show. Bob and Ryan from thinkcomputers.org are coming on the show on the 29th of September. We're actually going to work through parts. So I'm going to ask them for recommendations for this VR rig that I'm going to buy, and then we're going to be putting that together. Also, don't forget next week, Agent Crew from winespies.com is coming. Jay, you a wine guy at all? I know we talked bourbon and beer, but are you a wine guy? No,
No,
not
sir.
a wine guy. We enjoy a glass or we enjoy a bottle every night at dinner. And so Agent Crew is coming in from winespies.com. He'll join us next week. He listened to the show, and this is funny because he was like, dude, you talk about some serious gadgets. And I was like, yeah. He's like, I've got some wine gadgets. So we're going to spend some time. Yeah, it'll be fun next week talking about wine. I'm sure it'll be wine and spirits, right? And maybe even some beer. So we'll probably hit all three of those as well. Gavin Campbell's joining us the week after that. And then Dave from Mac Geek Gab is coming out to join us. Bob and Ryan are behind that. And then I got Edward Wendiger coming out to talk about crypto. So lots of stuff coming up. Make sure you don't miss an episode. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at the averageguy.tv live. Jay, can you stay for a few minutes of a post show? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Stay for a few minutes of a post show. If you didn't get questions answered, or we'll do some funny stuff. There's some funny stuff in the chat room that we'll bring in the post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. All right, friends. Hey, I said this in the show. KDJ says that AI scares him, and it's stupid. AI is still really dumb. You work around AI. Let me ask you that. I mean, we say these things are AI, but I mean, I really haven't seen any really good AI yet. Have you?
No, I mean, I work with tech companies, or I have anyway, and some of the things they do are amazing, like the self-driving cars and all of that stuff. Some of the technology in the AI that goes into that is amazing. I have a friend of mine who works at Microsoft on their voice communication. So I mean, yeah, I see some great stuff, but I don't know much about it to make too good of an opinion on it.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything actually work. No, okay, that's not true. So what we were talking a little bit about it right at the end of the show, that's what's the Sighthound. There's some companies that are doing recognition, video recognition, and they're doing it really, really well. There's some AI driven art through Jasper or now through Crayon that you can put in a text description and it makes the art of the description, right? Now that's taking some computing power. That is like, I mean, so I think it's scary. It's super scary. I think the
There's a few out there. You can type in
TSA,
some titles and they'll type up some text for you.
yeah, for same company. So they started with give them a few words and they'll write stuff for you based on what it understands on the internet. It's supposed to be that they got a plagiarizer checker on there as well.
Yeah.
Certainly the facial recognition stuff that we've got that they're using at airports now and probably in other places.
That's our world.
Yeah. That's gotten a lot better. Is that necessarily and KDJ, I'm glad you're having fun. Is that AI? I don't know. But I think we are getting better at some of those things. But self-driving we still are a ways from really good self-driving. They're trying to solve that, but we're a ways.
We were providing the security for a company in San Francisco, and that's all they do is self-driving vehicles, and they are all over the streets, all over. I mean, it's not just somewhere; they're everywhere. And watching these vehicles drive people around is crazy to me, but they work and they're doing a great job. Very little accidents. So
yeah,
not something I'd want to do just yet. But
maybe maybe we're a little closer than I think, but we're a little farther than what's reality. But
it depends on where you live. In Silicon Valley, they're embracing all of this stuff. We did a study just recently about you talked about VR, and we're talking about the morals you can really create some bad situations using VR. and you can create some amazing situations. For example, these tech companies, they all have non-disclosure agreements and you can't go into them. So for me, I can't send a team of officers into their facility to learn about their facility until they're hired. So I can't send a new candidate over there to say, is this an environment you would like to work in? Is this a place that you would, but I could put on a headset and I can show them the environment and I can show them what type of work they'd be doing and all of that stuff. So that type of VR is fantastic. But then when you get into some things that could lead you down the wrong path, then it starts to get questionable.
Yeah. 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 No, for sure. Um, yeah, my son is doing a lot in VR, and I
It's
was
amazing.
like, I know. He just ordered a pair of. I should probably have him on at some point. Um, he just ordered a pair of inserts. He's blind like I am, and so he ordered a pair of inserts. The headphones or the goggles were scratching the lenses from
Lens.
the were scratching. They're both too hard. So he ordered this pair that he could put in so he could wear instead. And they send a mold. What's your headset? They send a mold with the new corrected lenses in it based on the distance. And he put them on and he was like, I'm seeing better than when I don't have the headset on and I have my glasses on, right? It was a German company. There's um, not a lot of companies making these yet, but I think we'll probably see more of them as this gets more popular. He's spending a lot of time. He's DJing stuff, parties and stuff. So he's going in and putting sets together, and then doing some stuff. And I don't want all the gear to start with. I just want a headset, and I want to go in and just kind of see what's happening in
Poke
there.
around a little bit.
Yeah, and not from a dad like I'm worried about my kid in there. More like, what's like, if this is the future, like, how do I take advantage? I've been podcasting.
Start thinking of the
but,
possibilities.
I know.
I mean, things
I
you
know.
could do. You could train a group of people from miles and miles away, from across the globe. You can put on this goggle and you can sit there in a virtual classroom and train a group of people.
Yeah.
I think when you utilize a technology like that, we're talking about amazing options.
Yeah.
But if you're just sitting there, there's, like I said, there's plenty of bad things you can do with VR too. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, right on. Right on. He tells me all the time, he's like, I'm gonna go home and watch a pirated movie. Like, because in VR, like, none of that stuff is caught up. That all the copyright stuff hasn't caught up. That's it. In a lot of places, it's not the internet like we think. It's not regulated yet. Music's not regulated out there yet. Movies are not regulated out there. And listen, on the World Wide Web, you can find anything you want, and you go to the dark web to get that kind of stuff. But he says it's really common. It's really, really common. And so you can just go get a movie and put it on a big screen, and just
there you
like
go.
for you, it's just a big screen,
Yep.
right? So
I have 3 daughters, and the middle one is 8 years old, and she just turned 8, and that's what she wanted for her birthday was a VR set. So I'm like, man, how do you even know this stuff at 8 years old?
Yeah. Well, it's coming, my friend. It is coming, but it does take a little power. Like, we're still at a spot where you need a little juice to make it work.
Still a little clunky for me.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be. The trick will be, and this is what we're going to spend a lot of time talking with Bob and Ryan about. The computer's the easy part, right? But it's then you kind of pair it with a headset, and I'm kind of like I'm just like, I know I need a headset for like a year because they're changing all the time. So what do I go with? The PC setup's pretty easy to do. They specialize in high end stuff, and so we'll back it off just a smidge. But I do want to build that thing, so I only, I get 5 to 8 years out of that PC without having to be constantly. And now is a great time. Like, I waited long enough. Video cards have dropped, have plummeted some, and I think we're going to see some cheaper I think we're going to see some cheaper things coming out. Bob says most VR companies are not recommending children use VR, and so hopefully there's some guidelines on that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Bob. We decided not to go with the VR headset at this point, but
yeah, it's good. It's a good call. It's good. I don't even know my 25-year-old. Like, I'm kind of like, so what are you doing on there?
For anybody at this point.
What are you doing on there? Tell me what you're doing. He's actually, I mean, they in the evenings they have these big parties, and they're like dance parties. And listen, there's plenty of drinking going on, and in those kinds of things. But
they never leave the house anymore.
But he's super fit. Like, this is the fittest I've ever seen this kid. Like, because he dances for an hour or two at a time. With them, he's got the full body suit thing.
Oh wow.
And so he's, he can, and, he does these things, and he is in fabulous shape. And he says, he'll be like, he'll go, I'll get started. And then all of a sudden, take my headset off. And I'm just
drenched.
I'm just drenched with sweat. And he's like, and I just realized I've been doing this for an hour. Now, he was a Marine. So, I mean, he knows what it's like to be in good shape. But
maybe I should get a headset. Start doing some of these dance parties.
Maybe
picture this old fart showing up for a dance party.
I would break something, and then it would never heal. Right. That's the only problem. Like, it would never.
I couldn't imagine
it. It would be.
I'd spill the whiskey.
Exactly. It would be. It would be good. Like, I think the virtual tour space would be a good place for VR, where, there are spots on the planet we just can't get to, and to be able to go into those virtually, I think may be super cool. Like, maybe super cool to do a virtual fly through of the Grand Canyon or something like that, right?
Well, there's also that's exactly it. That's what the benefits are going to be. I mean, you've got people who might not be able to travel, people who might be, injured and might not be able to travel.
Right.
And they can now go see these different countries or different tourist areas or just sites. It's amazing for things like that. I mean, absolutely. There's so many benefits, but I'm just waiting to see what some of the downfalls are going to be.
Oh, yeah.
If there's a lot of benefit, there's going to be a lot of downfall too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's for sure. Who knows where it's going, right? I just don't want to be that old guy that's like,
I'll be the first one to buy it.
I want to be
the first one in line. I'll be at your son's dance parties.
Yeah, well, he's DJing some of those, and so it's like, Tim's here. Timmy, they call him Timmy. Timmy's here, and like, people are like, yeah, let the party start. That's what he tells me. So I want to see if it's actually true. Guys, thanks for coming out tonight. Good to see you, Joe. Thanks for checking in. He says flying a jet is pretty cool in VR until the USB disconnected for a few seconds. That might be a little.
That would be funny.
That's when when that goes dark.
Thanks, Bob.
Listen, nobody wants to see this guy dance.
Yeah,
this guy pointing at me. So, guys, if you came out live, for those folks who joined us, KDJ and such, if you guys want to join us next week, you're welcome to come out. No pressure, but thanks for coming out tonight. We'll see you guys next week. And who did I say is coming on? Oh, Agent Crew's coming on. We're talking wine next week, Wine Tech. Jay, hang tight for me. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.